the day I was driven out of the house by my family's scolding. Qi Xingyuan humiliated me in front of everyone. Wen Qian, even a dog wouldn't marry you. As he said those words, he was holding my cousin, whom my parents and brother cherished like a treasure, in his arms. Between my cousin Wen Yuan and me, Qi Xingyuan chose the gentle and sensible cousin. Obviously, my parents and older brother felt the same way. When I finally bought a plane ticket and decided to leave, it was during one last family dinner. My dad sighed. If only you were half as sensible as Yuan. My mom chimed in. All you do all day is fool around. My brother frowned. Learn more from Yuan. Qi Xingyuan. He was gently peeling shrimp for Wen Yuan. I quietly finished the meal and disappeared with my suitcase in the early hours of the morning. 5 years later, they came looking for me with red eyes, and I smiled and extended my hand. Mr. Wen. Mrs. Wen. Young Master Wen. Young Master Qi. How have you been? It felt like an icy hand had gripped and twisted my heart. The chandelier was dazzling, but what truly pierced my eyes was the bag that my brother Wenqing was presenting to Wen Yuan. Crocodile skin in lake blue. A delicate and exquisite metal clasp. It was the limited edition that I had been talking about for 3 whole months, scouring every boutique in the city, and finally managed to get my name on the waiting list at the SA. And there it was, being presented to Wen Yuan by my brother as if it were a treasure. Yuan. Look, your brother bought this for you. Do you like it? It goes perfectly with your new dress. It had been a long time since I had heard my brother's voice so gentle. When Yuan timidly took it and hugged it in her arms, her voice as thin as a mosquito's hum. Thank you, brother. It's too precious. It must have cost you a fortune. As she spoke, she quickly glanced at me, a hint of secret triumph in her eyes. The coldness twisting my heart suddenly tightened, almost making me breathless. I stared at Wenqing, my voice dry. Brother, that bag. Oh, Qian. It was as if Wenqing had just noticed that I was there. He turned his head, his brows furrowing habitually, with a hint of impatience at being disturbed. You wanted it too. The SA said it was the only one left. Yuan is weak. It's rare for her to like something. As her older sister, can't you let her have it? Don't be so inconsiderate. Brother will buy you something else later. Ha. Inconsiderate. Those 3 words pierced my already scarred heart with precision. He would never have said that to me before. Even when I was at my most mischievous and unruly, he would only gently pat my head. Qian, be good. And brother will buy you a pretty little dress. Okay. But now, those were the 3 words Wenqing said to me most often. Ever since my parents took in my cousin Wen Yuan, who was orphaned, frail, and sickly, a few years ago, those 3 words had become my label. Mom. When Yuan took my doll again, when Yuan tearfully sobbed, Auntie, I didn't know she would get angry if I touched her toy, even though that doll was clearly a limited edition toy that my uncle had specially given me for my birthday. My mom would immediately drop whatever she was doing, frown, and pull me away. Qian, what's wrong with you? Yuan is your younger sister. It's just a doll. Can't you let her play with it? Why are you so insensible? Uncle. Elder sister she pushed me. When Yuan fell in the muddy ground of the garden that had just been watered. But she complained to my dad that I pushed her. My dad didn't listen to my explanation, and his eyes were full of disappointment as he looked at me. Wenqing, how many times have I told you to take care of your younger sister? You're so insensible. Every time. Every single time. It was me who was insensible. My room faced the sun and was bigger and brighter. When Yuan first came, she timidly said she was afraid of the cold at night. The next day, my things were packed up by my mom and stuffed into the small, shady guest room. Qian. Be a good girl. Yuan isn't feeling well and needs sunlight. You're the older sister. So be sensible and give it to her. Sensible, sensible, sensible. Clearly, I was their daughter, but they always favored an outsider. Completely disregarding my feelings. I was fed up with this damned sensibility. I don't want anything else. A surge of anger rushed to the top of my head, burning away all my reason. I pointed at the bag in Yuan's arms, my voice sharp. I want this. I saw it first. I stood in line. Why should she have it? The air in the living room instantly froze. My dad slammed the newspaper on the coffee table with a smack. His face gloomy. Qian, you're going too far. It's just a bag. What's with all the shouting? Yuan is your younger sister. Why can't she have it? Is there no family affection or rules in your eyes? My mom also put down her coffee cup, looking at me disapprovingly. Qian, when will you ever grow up? Yuan is so well behaved. Can't you learn from her? All you do all day is bicker over these things. Is it even worth it? When Yuan seemed frightened by my voice, cowering slightly, her eyes quickly turning red, she hugged the bag tightly and sobbed softly. Elder sister, don't be angry, I don't want it anymore. Take it. Elder sister brother, don't blame elder sister. It's my fault. As she spoke, tears fell from her eyes like large pearls, as if she had suffered a great injustice. When Qing immediately put his arm around her shoulders, his gaze toward me turning completely cold. Qian, haven't you caused enough trouble? It's just a bag. Do you have to scare Yuan like this? Look at yourself now. What's the difference between you and a shrew? Can't you stop being unreasonable? A shrew. Unreasonable. Did they think that what I cared about was really just that one bag? The place in my heart that had been clenched finally released a clear cracking sound. The pain spread sharply, instantly engulfing all the anger and resentment. I looked at the scene before me, the brother protecting Yuan, the parents with faces full of disappointment, and the lake blue leather bag in her arms, sparkling and stabbing my eyes with pain. My throat was so choked that I couldn't make any sound. If I said another word, I felt like I would vomit blood on the spot. I spun around, no longer looking at any of them, not wanting to hear another word. A massive wave of humiliation and despair washed over me. Cold and drowning, I stormed out of the house, slamming the heavy carved wooden door behind me. Bang! The loud noise cut off any sound that might have followed, perhaps Yuan's fake sister. Don't go. Perhaps my parents' harsher scolding. Perhaps my brother's impatient let her go. None of it mattered anymore. The moment the door closed, the heavy twilight outside and the false warmth of the lights inside were completely severed. The late autumn wind carried a bone-chilling cold, cutting my face like a knife. I ran aimlessly, my lungs burning, but I felt no warmth at all. The label of shrew and unreasonable was like a branding iron, seared onto my soul. Where to go? Where else could I go? In my chaotic mind, only one name remained. Qi Xingyuan, the boy who followed me around as a child, stuffing the sweetest candies into my hand, the teenager who would take me to sneak out of school and take all the blame. The Qi Xingyuan who gave me a custom limited edition dress on my 18th birthday and whispered in my ear with a solemn promise. Qian, you look like a bride today. Promise me you'll marry me someday. He always said I was like a little son, lighting him up. Now, I just wanted to grasp this last faint glimmer of light. Maybe he would understand me. I hailed a taxi and gave the driver the name of Qi Xingyuan's usual private club. The driver glanced at me in the rearview mirror, probably startled by my red eyes and disheveled appearance, and drove quickly in silence. The club entrance was bathed in dim lights. I took a deep breath, trying to wipe away the tears on my face and suppress the grievances in my heart. Pushing open the heavy soundproof door, A deafening wave of music and clamorous voices washed over me. Through the haze of smoke, I saw Qi Xingyuan at a glance. He was sitting in the center booth, relaxed and at ease. The lights fell ambiguously on his sharply defined profile, and next to him, sitting close, was actually Wen Yuan. She was wearing a simple white dress, standing out from the surrounding extravagance, like a timid little white flower. Qi Xingyuan was leaning slightly, saying something to her with a smile. When Yuan lowered her head, her cheeks flushed, twisting the hem of her skirt nervously. Occasionally looking up at him, her eyes full of adoration and dependence. This scene, more than the farce about the bag at home, was like an ice-cold dagger, plunged into my heart and cruelly twisted. Qi Xingyuan could be with anyone, but why her? When Yuan, I froze in place. My blood seemed to have frozen. Several other rich kids who often played together in the booth saw me. One with dyed yellow hair, probably a little drunk, teased Qi Xingyuan with a grin. Yo, it's you, Qi Xiao. Speak of the devil, isn't this your little son? Miss Wen, what's this? Changed your route recently. Not chasing after Qi Xiao anymore. Now you're inseparable from second Miss Wen. He deliberately drawled, with a teasing tone. Didn't you say you were going to marry Miss Wen? Qi Xiao, you're changing directions pretty fast. A knowing chuckle rippled through the surroundings. The smile faded from Qi Xingyuan's face. He turned his head, his gaze landing on me. His expression was unfamiliar, tinged with displeasure at being disturbed, and a hint of, barely perceptible disdain. His thin lips parted slightly. His voice not loud, but it pierced my eardrums. Marry her, he scoffed, his voice filled with undisguised annoyance and mockery. When Qian's got a temper like a firecracker, lights up at the slightest thing. Even a dog wouldn't marry her. He paused, his gaze sweeping over Wen Yuan, who was trembling slightly beside him from nervousness and shyness. His tone becoming strangely gentle. If I were to marry, it would be someone gentle and sensible like Yuan. Even a dog wouldn't marry. Gentle and sensible. The world seemed to be muted. All the noise, music, and laughter instantly receded into the distance. Only Qi Xingyuan's cold words echoed madly in my empty mind. When Yuan seemed startled by this sudden confession, abruptly raising her head, her gaze towards Qi Xingyuan filled with disbelief, surprise, and shyness. She subconsciously snuggled closer to Qi Xingyuan, like a fledgling seeking shelter. Qi Xingyuan didn't look at me again, as if I were just an insignificant passerby who had ruined his mood. The excruciating pain in my heart surged again, more violent than ever before, not like being clenched, but being torn apart alive. So, when a heart shatters, it really does make a sound. I bit my lower lip hard, tasting the heavy taste of blood. My fingernails dug deep into my palm, trying to use this insignificant pain to suppress the overwhelming despair. I didn't cry. Tears seemed too cheap, too ridiculous in the face of such extreme humiliation and coldness. I took one last look at the perfect couple in the booth. Qi Xingyuan was whispering something to Wen Yuan. His profile unbelievably gentle, and Wen Yuan nestled beside him, her face full of undisguised happiness and satisfaction. Turning around, I straightened my back and walked, step by step, out of this place that had completely killed my heart. The door behind me, separating the noise from the cold reality, slowly closed. Darkness completely engulfed me. This time, there was no light at all. I thought I was completely disappointed in them, but when Chang's message came coldly, I still replied with a hint of hope. Okay. Wen Cheng. Yuan said she's organizing a family camping trip this weekend. Up to you if you want to go. Me. Okay. Send me the address. But this family camping trip was like a huge, inescapable nightmare. Her parents were excited, and when Qing took care of Wen Yuan attentively, afraid she might catch a chill, Qi Xingyuan also came, bringing a high-end insulated box filled with Wen Yuan's favorite snacks and fruits. They all forgot that I used to be the child they cared for and doted on when we went out to play. I was like a superfluous outsider, silently following at the back of the group. The wind in the forest carried the damp, cold scent of earth, blowing on me, and the chill burrowed straight into my bones. Qi Shenjuan's words that night, "Not even a dog would marry her," kept replaying in my mind, each time bringing a sharp, piercing pain. I'm just pathetic for harboring a shred of emotional longing for them. Yuan, are you cold? Put this blanket on. When Qing wrapped his wool blanket around Wen Yuan. Thank you, brother. I'm not cold. When Yuan declined softly. Her cheeks flushed. Listen to me. You're weak. My mother smiled from the side. Qinger is so thoughtful. My father also nodded. Yuan should be more careful. Qi Xingyuan then handed over an insulated cup, warm ginger tea, to ward off the cold. When Yuan took it, held it in her hands, sipped it slowly, her long eyelashes drooping, like a fragile porcelain doll. Her gaze occasionally swept over me, who was lagging behind, carrying a hint of pity and the superiority of a victor, as if declaring to me, "Look, the people who used to treat you the best are now all fawning over me, and you and Qian are heartlessly abandoned by them like a dog." At dusk, we found a flat meadow in the valley to set up camp. Nearby was a row of abandoned forest ranger cabins, standing darkly in the distance. Sister Qian, those cabins over there look so mysterious. When Yuan's friend, Lily, pointed at the cabins dramatically. Do you want to go explore together? Take some pictures. Yeah, they look so atmospheric. Another girl chimed in. When Yuan seemed a little scared, leaned closer to Qi Xingyuan, and said softly, "Could there be snakes inside? It's dark." A little scary. Qi Xingyuan immediately patted her shoulder reassuringly. "Don't be afraid. I'm here. What's there to be afraid of?" Yuan, it's broad daylight. Lily was very bold, grabbed Wen Yuan and started walking forward. Let's go. Sister Qian, come too. Strength in numbers." She reached out with her other hand to pull me, and I instinctively wanted to refuse. I have a deep-seated fear of the dark, stemming from an accident in my childhood. Qi Xingyuan and my parents and brother all know this, but looking at their excited appearances, especially when Yuan's dependence on Qi Xingyuan, a strange, self-destructive impulse suddenly surged in my heart. I nodded silently. Maybe going to a dark place, letting the fear overwhelm me, could temporarily numb the pain in my heart. The cabins were old, and light struggled to penetrate through the dilapidated windows and cracks in the door, barely illuminating the dancing dust motes. Inside, it was empty, with only some rotten wood and debris. Wow. Look at this broken cabinet. It'll definitely look post-apocalyptic in a photo. Lily excitedly pulled Wen Yuan inside. Qi Xingyuan stayed by Wen Yuan's side, turning on his phone's flashlight to light her way. I lagged behind, standing near the doorway, watching Qi Xingyuan hold Wen Yuan's hand tightly in front. My heart ached again. Qi Xingyuan knew I was afraid of the dark. Before, even when walking on a well-lit road with streetlights after school, he would hold my hand and say awkward things. Hold on tight. The streetlights might break later. And you better not start crying. A bitter smile squeezed out of my heart. When Qian, it's all in the past. The door was an old, heavy wooden one, with rusty latches hanging on it. The light inside the house grew darker and darker, with only the faint light from Qi Shenjuan's phone flickering. The darkness was like a viscous tide, silently surrounding us from all directions. gradually squeezing my nerves. Fragments of childhood memories of being locked in a dark room surged uncontrollably, bringing a cold sense of suffocation. I subconsciously took a step back, my heel hitting the threshold. Just then, a gust of wind suddenly rushed in. Bang click. A dull thud. The heavy wooden door was slammed shut by the wind. The old-fashioned latch on the door, under the force of the impact, actually clicked and fastened tightly. The sudden loud noise and complete darkness made the blood in my body rush to my head in an instant, and then freeze into ice the next second. "Ah!" Lily and another girl screamed in fright. "What's going on?" Qi Shenjuan's voice was filled with shock and anger, and the beam of his phone immediately swept towards the door. The door is closed," Lily cried out, her voice trembling. "Brother Shen, I'm scared." When Yuan's trembling voice echoed in the darkness. "Don't be afraid, Yuan. I'm here," Qi Shen comforted her, the beam of his phone shaking on the door, accompanied by the sound of him pushing and pulling at the latch. "Damn it! Rusted shut. Can't open it. What do we do? Are we going to be trapped here?" Another girl cried. "Phone. Quickly call someone." Lily was still relatively calm. I leaned against the cold wooden door, my body shaking uncontrollably. The extreme darkness swallowed everything, more real and terrifying than any nightmare. My heart was pounding wildly in my chest, each beat bringing a sense of near-death suffocation. Memories of being forgotten in the dark basement as a child surfaced clearly like ghosts. The cold, despair, and boundless fear gripping my throat. Unable to utter a sound, cold sweat instantly soaked the clothes on my back. Sticky and cold. "Hello, Brother Wenqing. It's me." We were at that small wooden house. The door was closed by the wind. "Can't open it. Come quickly with people." Lily's voice was filled with sobs. "Yes. It's that row of abandoned houses in the valley. Yuan is in there too. She's terrified. Qi Xiao is there as well." Okay. Hurry up," another girl added urgently. Yuan. How are you? Don't be afraid. Your brother and the others are coming soon." Lily turned towards Yuan's direction again. The beam of the phone flashlight swayed in the small space, occasionally sweeping across Yuan's pale, frightened face, and Qi Shenjuan's tightly furrowed brows as he continuously tried to break down the door. That faint light did not fall on me in the slightest. I was like an invisible ghost, completely forgotten in the corner by the door. Consumed by boundless darkness and fear, time became thick and long in the extreme fear. Every minute and every second was a torment for me. Finally, noisy footsteps and shouts came from outside the door. Yuan. Are you inside? Don't be afraid. Brother is here." It was Wencheng's voice. "Qin Yuan, what's the situation inside?" My dad was there too. "Uncle, we're here. The door is locked." Qi Xinyuan responded loudly. Yuan, my Yuan, are you okay? If something happens to you, how can your aunt explain it to your deceased parents?" My mom's crying voice was particularly piercing. The piercing sounds of tools prying and smashing the door rang out outside. Every heavy blow felt like it was hitting my taut nerves. Bang, clang, with a loud noise, accompanied by flying wood chips. The door was finally broken open by force. The blinding flashlight light suddenly shone in, and I subconsciously raised my hand to shield my eyes. Physiological tears were stimulated by the strong light and welled up. Yuan. Several figures rushed in almost simultaneously, heading straight for Yuan, who was being protected in Qi Shenjuan's arms. Yuan. How are you? Are you hurt? Were you scared? My mom pulled Yuan out of Qi Shenjuan's arms and hugged her tightly, her voice choked with sobs, carefully checking her up and down. Wenqing also squeezed to the front, his face livid. What happened? How could you be locked in here? Qi Xingyuan. What's wrong with you? I told you to keep an eye on Yuan. Although my dad didn't say anything. The tense jawline and tightly furrowed brows were also full of worry for Yuan and outrage at the accident. Qi Xingyuan had a hint of guilt on his face, and said in a deep voice. A gust of wind blew the door shut. The hasp was rusted and couldn't be opened. Yuan was quite frightened. His gaze swept across Yuan's pale little face, full of heartache. When Yuan nestled in her mother's arms, her body still trembling slightly, sobbing softly. Auntie, it's so dark. I'm so scared. Cough, cough. She suddenly coughed violently. Her little face flushed red. Oh dear. She caught a cold. She must have been frightened and caught a draft. My mom felt even more distressed and hurriedly took off her coat and wrapped it around her. Quick. Quick. Back to the campsite. Cheng'er. Bring the car over. We need to get Yuan something hot quickly. Okay. When Qing immediately turned and ran out. Uncle. Aunt. Let's take Yuan back first. It's windy here. Qi Xingyuan added immediately. A group of people, crowding around Yuan as if she were a fragile treasure, hurried towards the entrance. The beam of the flashlight swayed with their movement, skimming over the scattered wood shavings on the ground, over Lily and the other girls' terrified faces. No one looked back. No one asked. Where's Wen Qian? How is she? I stood in the shadows by the door, less than a step away from where it had been broken open. The violent coughing just now had churned my stomach. My throat clogged with a sickly sweet taste. Cold sweat soaked my clothes, clinging tightly to my icy skin, bringing waves of shivers, the lingering fear still coursing through my limbs. Lily and another girl, supporting each other, followed the group, still shaken, and went outside. From beginning to end. No one glanced at me. The last beam of the flashlight disappeared outside the door. A soft thump marked the sound of the campsite vehicle driving away. The world fell completely silent, deathly still. Only the howling wind in the valley, passing through the dilapidated wooden house, emitted an empty wail. Darkness closed in again, embracing me gently and cruelly, leaning against the cold, rough wooden door. My body slid down inch by inch, finally collapsing onto the cold, damp, dusty ground. No light, no voices. Tears finally surged out belatedly, scalding as they slid down my cold cheeks, splattering on the ground. Not because I was afraid of the dark, but because I finally understood completely that in this world, no one would ever light a lamp for me in the darkness, or open a door for me. Wen Qian, what exactly are you expecting? So, this is what it feels like when your heart dies. Not excruciating pain, but endless coldness and emptiness. I huddled in the cold darkness, not knowing how long it had been, until my body was numb with cold. My tears had dried, leaving only a nearly ethereal calm. As dawn approached, I dragged my stiff, cold body, step by step, back to the campsite. The campsite was quiet. The low murmur of voices came from my parents' tent, as if they were discussing going back early to take Wen Yuan to the doctor. When Cheng's tent was silent, Qi Shenjuan's conspicuous SUV was gone. No one noticed my absence all night. Or rather, no one remembered that there was even someone like me at the campsite. I quietly packed my simple luggage, without disturbing anyone, and boarded the earliest tourist bus leaving the campsite. The mountain forest outside the window gradually became clear in the dawn, full of new green life. But in my heart, only barren ashes remained. The phone screen lit up, the bank app notification displaying the latest deposit information. It was the final payment from the nouveau riche boss for resolving the feng shui issues of his new villa last month. The amount wasn't staggering, but it was enough to buy a one-way ticket to the other side of the world and sustain me in a foreign country until I found my first job. My fingertips slid across the cold screen, finally stopping on the airline app icon. Open it. Search. Select a destination in Nordic city known for its freedom and inclusiveness. Far enough away to separate me from the past. Pay. Confirm. The notification sound of the etiquette being generated was faint, but like a key. It clicked open a heavy shackle. Looking at the words "payment successful" on the screen, a faint glimmer of light finally pierced through the desolate ashes in my heart. Not joy, but a kind of near-exhausted, settled calm. I turned off my phone and walked to the window. Outside were the meticulously manicured lawns and precious flowers of the Wynn family garden, bathed in a false, temperature and humidity-controlled happiness. It was all so familiar, yet so suffocating. Before when Yuan came, I used to play in the garden, my parents running around me, my brother lifting me above his head. Now, I am no longer the protagonist of the story. I thought, it's time to end it. The last bit of ridiculous reluctance was about that illusion called home. Perhaps a thorough farewell is needed to sever the last thread of self-deception. Even if it's just to put a clear and decisive period on my more than 20 years of absurdity. I picked up my phone and opened the family group chat that had been almost silent. My finger hovered over the screen for a few seconds, but I finally typed a line of text. 7 p.m. tomorrow. Golden Tripod Pavilion. Room 888. My treat. Something to say. All the message was sent, and it took a full 10 minutes before the phone vibrated. It was Mom. Got it. Don't be late again. Followed by Wen Cheng. Okay. Yuan wants to eat their crab roe meatballs. Dad didn't reply. Qi Xing Yuan. I also sent him a message, but he didn't reply. Probably busy, or with someone. As expected. I tugged at the corner of my mouth, and that faint light seemed to brighten a little. Great. Even the last bit of hesitation is spared. The next evening, the Golden Tripod Pavilion was brightly lit. Room 888 was luxurious and spacious, the huge crystal chandelier refracting dazzling light. I arrived 15 minutes early. The huge round table was empty, and the waiter was quietly setting the tableware. Time passed, minute by minute, and at exactly 7 o'clock, the door of the room was pushed open. My parents walked in, my dad's brow habitually furrowed, my mom's face with a hint of fatigue, followed by Wen Cheng. He carefully protected Wen Yuan. She was wearing a soft apricot dress today, with a bit of sickly paleness on her face, making her look even more pitiful. Dad, Mom, brother, Yuan. I stood up, my voice calm and without emotion. My dad responded. Sitting down in the head seat, my mom glanced at me. Her gaze lingered on me for less than a second, then turned to Wen Yuan. Yuan. Sit down. Don't get tired. How are you feeling today? Still coughing. Much better. Auntie. Wen Yuan smiled softly and sat down on the chair Wen Cheng pulled out for her. Wen Cheng sat down next to her and casually asked me, "Where's Qi Xing Yuan? Didn't he come with you?" His tone implied a taken-for-granted question. "He's busy." I replied blandly and sat down as well. As soon as I finished speaking, the door to the private room was pushed open again. Qi Xing Yuan walked in, wearing a well-tailored dark suit that accentuated his upright figure. His gaze swept across the table and landed directly on the empty seat next to Wen Yuan. He naturally walked over, pulled out the chair, and sat down. Xing Yuan Gij. Wen Yuan looked up and gave him a sweet smile. Qi Xing Yuan nodded at her, the corners of his lips curving slightly as a greeting. Then, as if he had just noticed me, his gaze casually swept over. And he nodded. Wen Qian. His tone was as indifferent as if he were addressing a not-so-familiar colleague. Everyone was here. The waiter began to quietly serve the dishes, and exquisite delicacies filled the huge turntable. No one touched their chopsticks. and the atmosphere was somewhat stagnant. My father picked up his teacup and took a sip, breaking the silence. He looked at me, his eyes filled with familiar scrutiny. "Speak. What's the matter this time?" He put down his teacup, his voice not loud. But his words were full of blame, always rushing around, never settling down. "If you were half as sensible as Yuan, knowing how to be considerate of the family, your mother and I wouldn't have to worry so much about you." My mother immediately chimed in. "Exactly. Yuan is so much more reassuring, gentle and considerate. What about you? All you know is how to play outside, hanging out with unsavory people, coming home late at night. What kind of behavior is that?" As she spoke, her gaze swept over my simple black shirt and trousers, and her brow furrowed even more, as if I were wearing some kind of vulgar outfit. When Ching chuckled and picked up his chopsticks to place a glistening shrimp dumpling on Yuan's plate, without even looking up. "Dad's right, Qian. You should settle down too. Stop messing around and causing trouble all day long. Learn from Yuan. See how she does things." The turntable rotated silently. The beautifully plated steamed grouper, which Qi Xinyuan had noticed as soon as he arrived, now turned to face Yuan. "Yuan. Try this fish. It's very tender." He picked up the serving chopsticks and very naturally and carefully removed the most succulent, boneless piece of fish belly, placing it steadily on Yuan's plate. Yuan's cheeks flushed slightly, and she said softly, "Thank you." Xinyuan Gij. Qi Xinyuan didn't speak, but picked up an oil-braised prawn again. His slender fingers deftly peeled open the bright red shrimp shell, revealing the tender white shrimp meat inside, and then placed it on Yuan's plate again. Throughout the entire process, he focused on the movements of his hands, looking tenderly at the food gradually piling up on Yuan's plate. He didn't look at me once. I quietly watched the scene unfold before my eyes. He probably forgot that he used to peel them for me. And everything he put in Yuan's bowl was what I loved to eat. My dad's disappointment, my mom's blaming, my brother's undisguised comparisons and belittling, and Qi Shenjuan's indifferent, meticulous care for Yuan. They sat around the round table, symbolizing reunion and family, completely excluding me. I felt no anger, no grievance, not even sadness, just amusement. The barren ashes in my heart were completely extinguished of their last warmth by this final scene before me. It turned out that when your heart dies to the extreme, you can't even feel the pain. I picked up my chopsticks and took a piece of the closest dish to me, cold jellyfish salad. I ate quietly, chewing slowly, listening to them caring for Yuan. Listening to their labeling me as senseless and fooling around. Watching Qi Xinyuan ladle another small bowl of warm matsutake chicken soup for Yuan. This meal was unusually calm. Calm like a silent play with a foreknown ending. The dishes on the plates gradually emptied. The waiter quiet. Ly cleared the empty plates and brought up delicate fruit platters and hot towels. I put down my chopsticks, picked up a hot towel, and carefully wiped my hands and the corners of my mouth. Then, I looked up, my gaze calmly sweeping over everyone at the table, their gazes, some bright, some dim, some with lingering blame, some with indifferent detachment, finally briefly focused on me. I slightly tugged at the corners of my mouth, forming an extremely distant, almost non-existent curve. My voice was not loud, but it rang out clearly in the suddenly quiet luxury private room. "I'm done eating. Enjoy your meal. No explanations. No farewells." After saying that, I picked up the thin coat draped over the back of my chair and stood up. Under the astonished, frowning, and completely unreactive gazes of everyone, I turned around and walked, step by step, steadily and resolutely, out of this magnificent cage. The door closed softly behind me, isolating all sounds, and completely isolating that world called the past. 3 in the morning, the when family's villa was plunged into silent darkness. I dragged my small suitcase, containing only the bare necessities for survival, its wheels rolling across the carpet without making a sound. Reaching the entrance hall, I stopped and took one last look at the place where I had lived for 20 years. The huge crystal chandelier, the expensive Persian carpet, the priceless oil paintings on the walls. It was long overdue to leave. I felt no reluctance, took out my phone, and swiped my finger to open the address book. Those once extremely familiar names: Dad, Mom, Brother. Qi Xingyuan, like a row of cold tombstones. Delete. Confirm. The actions were crisp and clean, without the slightest hesitation. Next was WeChat, where the last message I sent, notifying everyone about the gathering, still remained in the family group chat. Open. Exit. Then. The list of associated names. Delete. Confirm. The screen went dark, and the world became completely silent. I pulled a small plastic card holder from my pocket. Inside was a brand new SIM card. Prying open the card slot, I removed the old SIM card that had been with me for years, carrying all my past contacts. Without a moment's hesitation, my fingers loosened. Tap. The small card, like a withered leaf, fell lightly, dropping into the white pebble gaps in the decorative vase in the entrance hall. Instantly submerged, disappeared without a trace. Then, I pushed the brand new SIM card into the card slot. Click. A soft sound, like a lock cylinder turning, completely locking the world behind me. Having done all this, I pulled up the collar of my coat, covering my chin, gripping the cold suitcase handle. I pushed open the heavy villa door. The wind of early autumn dawn, with its biting chill, instantly poured in, blowing away the last trace of stuffiness in the house. The air was cold and fresh, carrying the scent of freedom. I took a deep breath, the icy air rushing into my lungs, bringing a sting, yet strangely making me feel awake. Without looking back, I dragged my small suitcase and stepped into the boundless night outside the door. At the street corner, a reserved taxi was waiting quietly with its vacant red light on. I opened the car door, got in, and said calmly, "Airport." The engine started, and the car smoothly slid into the empty streets of the early morning. The scenery outside the window retreated rapidly in the darkness. Familiar street scenes gradually being left behind, blurred, and finally disappeared in the rearview mirror. I leaned against the cold car window, watching the darkness flowing rapidly outside. Above the desolate ashes in my heart, something was quietly budding. Not joy, not anticipation, but a long-lost, heavy, yet incredibly real relief. 5 years is enough for a city to undergo earth-shattering changes, and enough for a person to be reborn. In H City, located in northern Europe, the deep autumn sun shone generously through the huge floor-to-ceiling glass curtain walls, illuminating the entire modern press conference venue. The air was filled with the cool scent of pine and the rich aroma of freshly ground coffee. The audience was full, and the long lenses of cameras focused on the stage. I stood on the podium, wearing a sharply tailored pearl-white pantsuit that outlined a capable figure. Therefore, based on in-depth user behavior analysis and cross-cultural aesthetic models, the design concept of our Novalink series is not only to break down the barriers of physical space, but also to build a bridge of borderless emotional resonance. My voice, amplified by the microphone, clearly spread throughout the venue, my tone steady, confident, and carrying a seasoned composure. 5 years. From a penniless foreigner who didn't speak the language, to standing here today as the co-founder and chief product experience officer of the popular smart home brand Novalink. The blood and tears, the struggles, the countless sleepless nights in between, were known only to the long, Endless darkness of H City's winters and the simple cot under the desk. Applause rang out at the right moment. Polite and enthusiastic. Flashes of light merged into a silver sea. I nodded slightly in acknowledgement, my gaze calmly sweeping across the audience below. Just as my eyes glanced over the entrance at the side and rear of the venue, several figures abruptly crashed into my vision. They stood there, completely out of place among the surrounding business people and media reporters. My father, Wen Xinghong. 5 years had passed, and he seemed much older. His one straight back was slightly hunched, and his temples were streaked with large patches of glaring white. He wore a thick woolen coat that seemed somewhat out of season, his face etched with the fatigue of a long flight and an almost terrified urgency. His eyes were fixed on me on the stage, swirling with shock, unfamiliarity, and a hint of unspeakable remorse. My mother, Lin Wanrong. Her well-maintained face had lost its usual composure and elegance. Her eyes were red and swollen, and her meticulously styled hair was somewhat disheveled. She clutched the arm of the person next to her, her knuckles white with effort, her lips trembling slightly, as if she was about to lose control and shout out. The person whose arm she was clutching was Wenqing, my brother. He seemed to have changed the most. The once spirited and promising young talent had vanished. His complexion was an unhealthy gray-white, and his figure was much thinner. Enveloped in a dark coat that looked empty, he pursed his lips tightly, his brows furrowed deeply. In his eyes, there was incredulous astonishment, deep guilt, and a sense of bewilderment and pain after being slapped hard by reality. And standing on the other side of Wenqing was Qi Xingyuan. Time seemed to have been particularly kind to him. Still handsome and tall, with an expensive custom-made suit outlining his broad shoulders and narrow waist. However, the once effortless and noble demeanor had been replaced by a deep gloom and exhaustion. His jawline was taut, and his thin lips were pressed into a cold, hard line. Those deep eyes, once filled with starlight, were now dark and lifeless, reflecting only the radiant yet utterly unfamiliar figure on the stage. His gaze was fixed on me, filled with an intense shock, pain, and remorse, and a hint of almost humble pleading that I had never seen in his eyes before. Across the clamorous applause and dazzling flashes of light, across 5 long years and 10,000 kilometers of physical distance, their gazes, like barbed ropes, wrapped around me tightly. The location of my heart seemed to be bumped, not lightly, not heavily, by the combined force of those gazes. My assistant once said to me, "President Wen, your family in China seems to have been looking for you. And that Qi Xingyuan too. They've issued high rewards and are searching for you all over the world." "Oh, really?" I replied faintly, without the slightest hesitation, and plunged back into my busy work. Seeing them in person at the press conference today didn't trigger the agonizing pain I had anticipated. Instead, there was only a faint sensation, fleeting. My gaze didn't linger on them for more than a second. The smile on my face remained unchanged as I smoothly concluded the speech, once again offering an elegant nod to the audience below. "Thank you all." Another thunderous applause erupted. I turned around and, surrounded by assistants and security personnel, walked towards the backstage passage with calm and steady steps. "Miss Wen, please wait. Miss Wen, one more question please." Behind me came several urgent shouts in both Chinese and English, some from the media, and seemingly, also mixed with a familiar, trembling voice. I didn't look back. The door to the passage closed silently behind me, cutting off all the noise and gazes. In the backstage lounge, the assistant hurried up, handing me a glass of warm water, her tone carrying a subtle hint of nervousness. "One, those people outside seem to be here for you. Should we notify security?" I took the glass, took a small sip, and looked up. "No need." My voice was calm and even. without any discernible emotion. Insignificant people. Has the media interview after the press conference been arranged? It's arranged. In the small conference room in 10 minutes. Okay. I nodded and walked to the vanity mirror. Slightly adjusting a stray strand of hair at my temple, the woman in the mirror had calm and sharp eyes, with no trace of the Wen Qian who could only suffer in silence back then. 10 minutes later, I appeared in the small conference room on time. Reporters from several major media outlets were already waiting inside. The interview went smoothly, with questions revolving around products, the market, and future strategies. Professional and efficient. After an hour-long interview, the reporters left one after another. The last reporter, a blonde-haired, blue-eyed woman, packed up her recorder, stood up, and smiled. Miss Wen, thank you very much for your time. Your brand story is very inspiring. Especially your mention of the difficulties when you first arrived in H City. It was very impressive. Finally, can you share what is the biggest driving force that has supported you along the way? Is it family? Family. This familiar yet unfamiliar word, like a tiny pebble thrown into a calm lake, rippled almost imperceptibly in my heart, and then disappeared without a trace. I smiled slightly, the smile standard and distant, with just the right amount of professionalism. What supports me is the belief in creating value. Countless partners who fight alongside me. Anne. I paused. My gaze turned to the clear and distant sky of H City outside the window. A self that never bows to the past. The reporter smiled knowingly and admiringly, thanked me again, and left. The conference room fell silent. I picked up the folder on the table and was about to leave. Click. The wooden door of the conference room was gently pushed open from the outside. Those figures had finally appeared at the door. They stood there, blocking the only exit. 5 years of time and 10,000 kilometers of distance seemed to be compressed and distorted at this moment, leaving only the heavy confrontation within a few feet between inside and outside the door. The air in the lounge seemed to freeze instantly. My dad stood at the front, his eyes fixed on me, his lips trembling, squeezing out a few broken syllables from deep in his throat. Qian, Qian, is that really you? His voice was terribly hoarse, with a deathly tremor and disbelief. My mom was already in tears. She broke free from Wen Cheng's supporting hand and staggered forward, her voice sharp and broken, with a heavy sob. Qian, my daughter. Mom is sorry. Mom was wrong. Mom was really wrong. We've been looking for you for 5 years, and we've finally found you today. When Yuan has cleared out your room for you, and I've bought you a lot of pretty dresses. When Yuan has also been sent away by us, and she will never appear in front of you again. Qian, will you come home with Mom? Please, come home. She reached out, as if trying to pounce on me. But Wen Cheng held her back tightly. Wen Cheng's face was even paler than it had been at the venue. He held his emotionally unstable mother tightly, but his gaze was nailed to my face like a nail. His eyes were full of regret, pain, self-blame, and a sense of despondency that had been completely defeated by 5 years of time. He opened his mouth, as if wanting to say something, but in the end he just closed his eyes in pain and let out a suppressed sob. As for Qi Xingyuan, he stood at the back, leaning against the door frame. His tall figure seemed a little hunched at this moment, and there was no expression on his handsome face. Only a dead grayness. Only his bottomless eyes were fixed on me, unblinking. His gaze churned with tidal waves of pain, remorse, and a trace of a near-insane stubbornness. I calmly withdrew my gaze, picked up the folder and phone on the table, stood up, and walked towards the door without hesitation. As I approached, the wall of people at the door seemed to become more rigid and tense. My mom's crying turned into a suppressed sob. My dad's body swayed, and the last glimmer of hope in his eyes was completely extinguished, leaving only an ashen despair. When Ching bit his lower lip tightly, and the veins on the back of the hand holding his mother's hand bulged, and Qi Xingyuan, at the moment when I was about to brush past him, his body suddenly tensed. He subconsciously reached out his hand, the hand with distinct knuckles that had gently stroked Wen Yuan's hair countless times, and suddenly grabbed my wrist. The cold fingers, with a desperate force, tightly clasped my wrist. Qian, he finally spoke, his voice hoarse and pleading. Don't go. I stopped. Not because of his touch, nor because of that broken cry, but simply because my way was blocked. I lowered my eyelashes, my gaze falling on my wrist that he was holding. That hand, which once made my heart race and filled me with longing, now offered only coldness and an indescribable unfamiliarity. Then, I raised my head. My gaze calmly swept over his bloodshot eyes, filled with pain and humble pleading, and over the faces behind him, equally marked with regret and despair. There was no anger, no resentment, not even a ripple of emotion. I offered them a detached smile. Excuse me, I need to get through. With a slight twist of my wrist, a small movement, I easily broke free from that desperate hand. Qi Shenjuan's hand froze in midair, his fingers contracting futilely before finally dropping limply. The color drained from his face, and the last faint light in his bottomless eyes was completely extinguished. I didn't look at him again, nor at the three relatives behind him, who seemed to have instantly lost all their vitality. I looked straight ahead, as if they were merely air. I started walking, my high heels clicking crisply on the polished floor, making clear clack sounds, and without hesitation, I walked past them, toward the sunlit hallway outside the door, toward a vast and free future that was no longer connected to them. The bright sunlight outside the door poured in instantly, outlining my straight and resolute figure. Behind me, the silence was broken by a sudden outburst of suppressed, extreme crying. Qian, my daughter. There was also a muffled thud, as if all the strength in his body had been used to slam into the doorframe, accompanied by Wen Cheng's hoarse exclamation. Qi Xingyuan. I didn't look back. Not a step. Not a pause. End of the main text epilogue. On the morning after Wen Qian disappeared, the Wen family villa was shrouded in an unusual calm. Lin Wanrong came downstairs, rubbing her temples, and frowned at the empty living room. Qian didn't come back last night again. That child is getting more and more outrageous. Her tone was habitually reproachful as she turned to the kitchen to prepare a stomach-soothing breakfast for Wen Yuan. When Xinghong sat at the dining table reading the newspaper, and upon hearing this, he simply grunted without looking up. Let her be. She's over 20 and doesn't understand any rules. Where's Yuan? Let her sleep in. She was frightened by the camping trip the other day. When Qing appeared, yawning, and casually chimed in, don't worry about her. She'll know to come back when she's had enough fun. Did Yuan sleep well last night? Mom, make her some bird's nest soup to calm her nerves. His attention was entirely on his phone, busy texting Qi Xingyuan to arrange to take Wen Yuan to see the newly released movie that evening. For 3 days in a row, when Qian's room remained empty, the habitual certainty that she's out fooling around again began to be replaced by a subtle unease. The dining table felt particularly spacious without the figure who was sometimes boisterous and sometimes annoyingly silent. Give her a call. When Xinghong put down his chopsticks, his tone commanding, ask her how long she intends to keep this up. Lin Wanrong picked up her phone and dialed, but the voice from the receiver was a cold, mechanical one. The number you dialed is no longer in service. No longer in service. The restaurant fell silent instantly. When Cheng and Wen Xinghong looked up simultaneously, and when Yuan also stopped sipping her soup, a flicker in her eyes, No longer in service. How is that possible? Lin Wanrong, not believing it, dialed again. With the same result. Wenqing immediately pulled out his own phone and dialed Wenqian's number, only to hear the same emotionless prompt. The ease on his face vanished, replaced by a trace of panic. Dad. Mom. Qianqian's phone. It really is out of service. A chill silently crept up the spines of the 3 Wen family members. Before, no matter how angry Wenqian was, her phone could always be reached. Even if she didn't answer. Out of service. It signified a complete, resolute severance. Find Qi Xinyuan. When Jing Hong stood up abruptly. He must know. When Qing practically rushed out of the house. When he arrived at Qi Shenjuan's office on the top floor of the Qi Corporation. Qi Xinyuan had just finished a meeting. His brow furrowed with his usual noble air and a hint of irritation. When Qing asked bluntly, Xinyuan. Has Qianqian contacted you? Her phone is out of service. She's gone. Qi Xinyuan frowned. When Qian. Isn't she? He subconsciously wanted to say. Isn't she just throwing a tantrum? But the words caught in his throat. A strong sense of incongruity struck him. How long had it been since he had a proper conversation with Wen Qian? When did it start? Fragments of memories flooded his mind uncontrollably. Was it half a year ago? When he bailed on the art exhibition he had promised Wen Qian they would see together because Wen Yuan was suddenly feeling unwell and scared to be home alone. So he drove to keep her company for the afternoon, leaving Wen Qian stranded in front of the art museum for 3 hours. Only to receive a cold understood from her. Was at that time during the rainstorm when he received a tearful call from Wen Yuan saying she was lost and scared in the underground garage. So he immediately turned the car around, leaving Wen Qian, who had gotten out of the car in a fit of pique after a minor argument, alone on the roadside in the pouring rain. Or was it last month, when Wen Qian accidentally knocked Wen Yuan's new phone to the ground, cracking the screen? And what did he say then? Wen Qian. Can you be more careful? Yuan's things can't withstand your clumsiness. He remembered the look Wen Qian gave him then. Icy and piercing. Not saying a word. Turning and leaving. Those details he had ignored. Those increasingly infrequent contacts from Wen Qian. That increasingly silent figure. Now pricked his heart like dense needles. A strong sense of loss, suffocating in its intensity, gripped him without warning. She hasn't contacted me. Qi Shenjuan's voice was a little dry. He immediately picked up his phone and dialed Wen Qian's number. When the no longer in service prompt came from the receiver, his heart stopped abruptly, his face paling slightly. How was that possible? How could she possibly change her phone number? What exactly was Wen Qian doing? Find her. Find her for me now. Qi Xinyuan roared at his assistant, his voice losing its usual composure. Check all her bank card spending records. Contact all the friends she might know. Airports. Train stations. Check them all for me. In the days that followed, the Wen family and Qi Xinyuan mobilized all the connections they could, searching for Wen Qian like madmen. There were no unusual transactions on her bank cards. It was as if she had vanished from the face of the earth. They contacted everyone they could think of who had ever interacted with Wen Qian, but the responses were either, "We haven't been in touch for a long time," or "I don't know." When Qing found Wen Qian's only close friend, Song Yi, in a quiet cafe. Song Yi looked at the haggard Wen Qing and the silent, suppressed Qi Xinyuan beside him, and a mocking smile curved her lips. Well, if it isn't the Wen family's young master and the great President Qi, what brings you here? Looking for Qian. Song Yi stirred her coffee, her tone cold. Worried now. Where were you before? Neglecting such a wonderful girl as Wen Qian, and doting on a white lotus flower like she's a treasure. Were your brains squeezed in a door, or kicked by a donkey? When Chang's face turned livid from the scolding, but he didn't dare lash out. Song Yi. We're really worried. Qian she's gone, driven away by you, and that pretentious Wen Yuan. Working together. Song Yi interrupted him, her eyes sharp. Are you satisfied now? Qi Xingyuan suddenly looked up, his eyes grim. Song Yi, watch your words. I know I neglected Qian because of Yuan. It was my fault. But Yuan, at least her gentleness and understanding aren't fake. Deep down, he still didn't want to believe that the girl who always spoke softly and helped him with his worries was a fake. Gentle, understanding. Song Yi laughed out loud, as if she had heard the biggest joke in the world. Qi Xingyuan, I used to think you were just blind, but now I realize you're a complete idiot. When Yuan is playing you for a fool and you're still helping her count the money. What do you mean? When Chang's heart sank. What do I mean? Song Yi looked at them coldly. You want to know what kind of person Wen Yuan is? Can't you investigate it yourselves? Go ask her good friend Jiang Qingqing. See what kind of person your precious white flower really is behind your backs. Song Yi's words were like a bomb thrown into deep water. Qi Xingyuan and Wen Qing immediately found Jiang Qingqing's house. They didn't notify her in advance, and directly rang the doorbell. Jiang Qingqing opened the door, her face still bearing a lingering smile. Her phone was on a video call, and Wen Yuan's face was clearly visible on the screen. Now that's good. When Qian, that eyesore, was finally driven away. Everything from the Wen family and brother Xingyuan will all be mine. No one can threaten me anymore. Qingqing. Do you think I am? The smile on Jiang Qingqing's face instantly froze when she saw the grim-faced, horrified Qi Xingyuan and Wen Qing at the door, turning into terror. Yuan. Her hand trembled, and she almost dropped her phone. When Yuan on the other end of the video also saw the figure at the door, her smug voice came to an abrupt halt, and her face turned ashen. With a scream, the video was instantly cut off. No. Qi Xiao. Wen Xiao. Jiang Qingqing tried to close the door, but Qi Xingyuan grabbed her wrist. Speak. What exactly did Wen Yuan mean just now? Qi Xingyuan's voice was low, and his eyes were so cold they could freeze a person to death. Wen Qing also stared at her intently, veins popping on his forehead, under their powerful pressure and threats. When Yuan's plastic best friend's psychological defenses completely collapsed, and she confessed amidst tears and snot. The truth was like the most disgusting abscess being completely lanced. When Yuan was never inherently weak. After her parents died when she was young, she took a fancy to the Wen family's wealthy background and meticulously planned to appear weak and pitiful to gain sympathy. Successfully moving into the Wen family, her goal from the very beginning was clear: to replace Wen Qian, become the center of the Wen family, and win over Qi Xingyuan as a golden turtle. She knew that Wen Qian had a straightforward and fiery personality, making it easy for her to have friction with Qi Xingyuan. She seized every opportunity to show gentleness and understanding in front of Qi Xingyuan, subtly alienating the two of them, gradually making Qi Xingyuan feel that Wen Qian was making trouble out of nothing and immature, while she was the one who could give him a warm harbor. Driving Wen Qian away was the most crucial step in her plan. She used the Wen family's preference for sensible behavior and their guilt towards her, repeatedly provoking, framing, and intensifying the conflict between Wen Qian and her family, eventually causing Wen Qian to completely lose heart and leave. Every word Jiang Qingqing said was like a red-hot iron, searing Qi Xingyuan and Wen Cheng's hearts. Their self-righteous judgments, the preferential treatment they gave, every time they accused Wen Qian and defended Wen Yuan, had become the sharpest knife in Wen Yuan's hand, slowly torturing Wen Qian's heart. Both of them felt like a bolt from the blue. Regret, like a monstrous wave, instantly swallowed them. Wen family villa. When Wen Yuan was dragged back to the Wen family by Wen Qing like a dead dog, facing Wen Jinghong and Lin Wanrong's shocked, angry, and remorseful gazes, as well as Qi Shenjuan's gaze that wished he could cut her into 1,000 pieces. She knew it was all over. Get out. Wen Jinghong pointed at the door, his hand trembling violently. Take your things and get out of the Wen family immediately. Don't ever let me see you again. Lin Wanrong had already collapsed on the sofa, hitting herself. I was blind. I harmed Qianqian. When Yuan looked at this chaotic scene, her face showing not fear, but a twisted sense of pleasure and sarcasm. She shook off Wen Cheng's hand, tidied her disheveled hair, looked around at the magnificent place that could no longer accommodate her, and laughed shrilly. Get out. Of course. I'll get out. But, do you think it's over just by pushing all the blame on me? Will Wen Qian come back just because you kicked me out? Dream on. She pointed at Wen Jinghong. You, always talking about rules and reputation. But have you ever given your own daughter a shred of trust? You never believed a word she said. You only believed my pitiful act. A mere outsider. She then pointed at Lin Wanrong. And you, my dear aunt. You only care about the kind of sensible and obedient daughter you want. The slightest bit of individuality or temper from Wen Qian. And in your eyes, she's spoiled and disobedient. Have you ever cared about what she truly wanted? Finally. Her gaze locked onto Wen Cheng's face, his eyes bloodshot and fists clenched, her tone filled with venom. As for you, my dear brother, you're the most hypocritical. All you ever wanted was a good little sister who would let you show off your brotherly authority and obey your every whim. Wen Qian's rebelliousness and assertiveness made you feel like you were losing control, like you were losing face. So you eagerly grabbed onto me as a replacement. It's you. You pushed Wen Qian away yourselves. Now you're acting all heartbroken. Too late. Ha 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 ha. Shut up. Wen Qing was completely hit where it hurt. He lunged forward and slapped Wen Yuan hard across the face. Smack. The crisp sound of the slap echoed through the living room. Wen Yuan staggered back, blood trickling from the corner of her mouth. She covered her face, looking at each member of the Wen family with resentful eyes, including Qi Xinyuan, who was ashen-faced. She let out a string of wild, shrill laughter, then stormed out of the Wen family's front door without looking back. The living room was deathly silent. Wen Yuan's words were like a sharp dagger, tearing away the last shreds of the Wen family's and Qi Shenjuan's self-deceptive fig leaf, exposing the bloody, ugly truth beneath. Yes, it was them. It was their repeated distrust, their stubborn preference for the facade of sensibility, that pushed that daughter-sister who would cuddle up to them, who would awkwardly try to care for them, that vibrant, real person, into the abyss of despair. Immense grief and regret, like tangible boulders, crushed everyone. When Jinghong seemed to have aged 10 years overnight, slumped on the sofa, his eyes empty, Lin Wanrong's crying turned into desperate wails. When Qing covered his face, crouching on the ground, his shoulders shaking violently, Qi Xinyuan stood there, his whole body cold. When Yuan's deception made him furious. But what caused him even more unbearable pain was himself. He had personally pushed that girl with eyes full of him further and further away until she disappeared completely. The cruel insult. Even a dog wouldn't marry her, echoed repeatedly in his mind. Each time bringing excruciating pain, he remembered himself as a child, vowing to marry her. A cruel joke. In the days that followed, remorse drove them to conduct an almost futile search. The Wen family offered a reward of 50 million to find Wen Qian's whereabouts. A sensational news that attracted countless opportunists, but no real clues. Qi Xinyuan was like a madman. He set aside most of his company's affairs and flew all over the world, not giving up any place where Wen Qian might have been. But he was disappointed time and time again. The huge mental pressure and self-torture made him lose weight rapidly. with an unyielding gloom and despair in his eyes. The Wen family's company was declining due to the core figure's mental exhaustion. Wen Qing spent his days drowning his sorrows in alcohol, trying to numb the bone-biting regret. But he only sank deeper and deeper. Time crawled by laboriously for 5 years in hopeless searching and deep regret. Until that day, the huge LCD TV screen was playing international financial news. A familiar yet incredibly strange name and figure exploded like a thunderclap in the Wen family's nth living room. The highly anticipated smart home brand Novalink held a global new product launch conference in H City today. Its co-founder and chief product experience officer, Miss Wen Qian, delivered a wonderful speech. The woman on the screen was wearing a pearl white suit. Her posture upright, her temperament aloof and powerful. She stood under the spotlight, confidently and fluently explaining the product concept in fluent English. Radiating brilliance, that face had shed all its youthfulness and grievances, leaving only the calmness and sharpness that had been tempered over time. It was Wen Qian. It really was her. Huge shock and ecstasy instantly swept through the 3 members of the Wen family. The remote control in Wen Zhanghong's hand fell to the ground with a clatter, and Lin Wanrong covered her mouth, tears streaming down her face. The wine glass in Wen Cheng's hand shattered, and the wine splashed all over the floor. But he was completely unaware, just staring at the screen, his whole body trembling. Almost at the same time, Qi Shenjuan's phone also vibrated frantically, with Wen Cheng's name flashing on the screen. He swiped to answer, and all he heard was Wen Cheng's incoherent, tearful scream. Found her. Xin Yuan. We found Qianqian. In H City. On TV. A launch conference. Qi Shenjuan's heart was as if grasped tightly by an invisible hand, then suddenly released, and his blood rushed wildly. He rushed to the TV and pulled up the replay, when that face that was etched in his mind, yet transformed beyond recognition, clearly appeared on the screen. The huge shock made him stagger, and he barely managed to stand still by holding onto the table. 5 years. After more than 2,000 days and nights of agonizing searching, he finally saw her figure, but in such a distant way, without any hesitation. The 3 members of the Wen family applied for visas as quickly as possible and booked the earliest flight. Qi Shengyuan even used a private plane, arriving in H City almost at the same time as the Wen family, following the news clues. They rushed into the launch conference venue regardless of everything, and after the conference ended, they waited at the door of the backstage lounge. Thus, there was that heartbreaking scene. She saw them, her gaze calm and unwavering. As if passing by unimportant strangers, she called them Mr. Wen, Mrs. Wen, Young Master Wen, and Young Master Qi. She shook off his hand with a light movement, as if brushing away a speck of dust. She said, "Excuse me, coming through." She said, "I'm done eating. Please, continue." And then left resolutely. She said, "Insignificant people." She said, "Myself, who will never bow to the past." Every word, every look, every movement of hers was like the sharpest icicle, piercing and shattering again the heart they had barely pieced together with regret and pain over the past 5 years. She left, clicking her heels, her back straight, her pace composed. She walked towards the sunlit corridor, towards a future they could never reach and had no right to participate in. Behind her, a world collapsed, as if all his strength had been drained, when Xinghong slumped onto the cold floor of the corridor, tears streaming down his face, muttering, "Qianqian, Dad was wrong." Lin Wanrong cried out daughter with a heart-wrenching scream, trying to chase after her, but Wen Qing held her tightly, and mother and son both fell to the ground, their desperate cries echoing in the empty corridor. Wen Qing hugged his mother, burying his face in her shoulder, his shoulders shaking violently, his suppressed sobs like those of a wounded beast. Qi Shengyuan leaned against the cold wall, slowly sliding to the ground. He didn't cry, but just looked up at the dazzling white light on the ceiling. His eyes as empty as a desert. On his wrist, there still lingered the cold touch of her breaking free. The cruel words "not even a dog would marry you" echoed madly in his silent mind, along with her final, distant, and cold young master Chi, plunging him completely into an abyss of eternal doom. He knew he had lost her forever. The girl who would carefully give him all the chocolate she had on her just to make him smile, who would study math and physics desperately to go to the same university as him, who would try to wear dresses she didn't like because he said, "It doesn't look good." The girl who used to illuminate his life like a little sun had been personally extinguished of all light and warmth by him. Later, it was said that Qi Xinyuan never married. He became even more taciturn, devoting all his energy to work. Under his iron fist, the Qi group's territory continued to expand, but the loneliness and gloom surrounding him never dissipated. The position beside him remained forever vacant. After being kicked out of the Wen family, when Yuan couldn't bear losing her privileged life, relying on her remaining beauty and scheming, she quickly became the mistress of an elderly rich man. However, her good fortune didn't last long. She was discovered by the rich man's wife. The wife was ruthless. She had Yuan's hands and feet broken and drove her out of the city completely, having lost her only support and with a disability. When Yuan's fate was predictable, she eventually disappeared into the mire of the lower class. Forgotten by all, the Wen family's fortunes declined day by day, when Zhang Han's health collapsed under the enormous blow and regret, and the company's business plummeted. Lin Wanrong spent her days in tears, her mind distraught. Wenqing became a living corpse, neglecting company affairs and spending his days with alcohol, numbing the bone-deep pain and irreparable mistakes in a drunken stupor. On the other side of the ocean, in H City, the sun shone brightly. When Qian stood in front of the floor-to-ceiling windows on the top floor of Novalink headquarters, overlooking the vibrant city, her assistant handed over the latest market report, which she quickly perused, her eyes focused and sharp. Occasionally, in a fleeting moment, a few distant and blurred faces might flash through her mind, but it was just a fleeting glimpse, like wind skimming across a lake, leaving no trace. Her world had long moved forward, vast and boundless,